Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the July Finance Committee meeting to order. The first order of business, please, would be the approval of minutes, and I'd like to have a motion, please. And a second, please. And a vote, please. Minutes are so approved. I now turn the meeting over to Gary Lanigan, who will take us through the work plan, please.
There are no changes to the work plan. We do have one public speaker this afternoon, Mr. Gene Rashnoff.
Close. That's not good.
Good afternoon. Okay, nothing bad happened. Good morning. I'm Gene Rushenoff with the Strap Hangers campaign, and I understand that you're going to be discussing a pretty massive amendment to the capital plan. I'm here to urge you to hold off. Instead of submitting it to the state, to the MTA Capital Program Review Board, first give the panel, headed by former MTA Chairman Richard Ravitch, a chance to look at your total financial needs and to consider how to fund them. As you know, the proposed amendments would cut $2.7 billion in vital projects. These include eliminating 19 of 44 station rehabs, 5 plant projects, $177 million worth of structural line repairs, and more than $500 million of repairs to rail yards, bus depots, and employee facilities. Those cuts add up to an astonishing 18% of your current $14.7 billion core capital program. And I'll just give one example, stations. When the plan came out, you originally proposed to do 56 stations in a 5-year period. If you proceeded at that pace, you said you would finish all the stations, all 468 stations, by the year 2024. Now, with these amendments, if they're approved, at 25 every 5 years, you should get to a state of good repair for stations by the year 2050. And that's not a timeline. It's the punchline of a joke. Your staff does not agree. They believe these cuts are unavoidable in a tough economic time with high construction costs and a weak U.S. dollar. But to me, it makes no sense to take $2.7 billion off the table so that Richard Ravitch and his panel doesn't have to consider those needs along with your 10 years' worth of capital needs. Finally, if the MTA decides to move ahead with this capital plan amendment, the Strap Hangers campaign will give serious consideration to urging the MTA Capital Review Board to veto the plan. Thank you.
The next item is the Finance Watch. There is no Budget Watch in the month of July, since the budget will be presented at the Joint Committee with the full board on Wednesday.
Okay. Just to report on 3 transactions. One, we completed as scheduled the dedicated tax fund refunding bonds on June 25th. Last week we went to the market with about $1 billion of TBTA bonds. They'll be this was on the calendar, take out of our commercial paper, which frees up new money capacity and additional refundings. And an upcoming transaction, a refunding transaction, $350 million of dedicated tax fund bonds. That's it. Scheduled to close early August.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be relevant for the committee to hear when we get reports on fundings and refundings that we have some indication of what the rates were, what the overall cost was, and how it relates to our plan, so that the whole operation takes on an aura of reality as opposed to just noting that dollars are being refunded.
I'll tell you what you do. Since the market is in turmoil, there's no question. There's been a lot of change there. Why don't you give us a little overview of how these financings went, where they stand, what's happening with the market. Why don't you spend a few minutes and bring us up to date? You or Gary would, or both of you, actually.
Just to bring you up to date on this, the first transaction, the DTF 2005A bonds, which were taken out by the DTF 2008A bonds. Since March, the 2005 bonds were pricing at 10% variable rate, and we're down, 10% since March, the bonds that were refunded. The refunding bonds are now pricing under 2%. So that's the background on that. And the bonds that we've noticed the market already are mostly insured by AMBAC, which is another insurer that's been downgraded. Currently, we're pricing at about 6 to 8% in the marketplace. So.
There's plenty of variable left, right? And part of this that Vinay's talking about are replacements still within variable mode. We do not have a plan to take out an existing public plan of taking out all auction rate securities. What we've done is, as you know, because we've discussed it in some detail in this committee, is we've identified where that portion of the portfolio was troubled as a result of difficulties both inside the auction rate market as well as particular trouble with specific monoline insurers. We've identified those problematic portions of the portfolio and acted aggressively towards either replacing or with fixed or with switching it to VRDO debt. What Vinay was talking about is what the effect is in those two particular transactions. I don't think he described the Triborough deal because that hasn't yet closed. But this is a continuation of the policy that we've been talking about throughout, of where we had these troubled securities that were trading, or not trading, actually they weren't trading, and as a result they were resetting at the penalty rates. Those are the pieces that we've had to take out. We continue to monitor this situation on a routine basis to make judgments as to where there continues to be new problems in this marketplace, and where new problems pop up, then we take additional actions to remedy them. And the last piece that Vinay mentioned to you was this next refunding that's taking place over the course of the next, 6 weeks for the rest of the summer. None of this, almost none of this, was new money issuance. All of this is to replace or refund existing indebtedness.
Gary, how's our debt, actual costs of our debt financing going as per budget through June?
Right. We're actually slightly positive, positive in the sense of better than budget. The budget assumes that our fixed rate portfolio is at 5%, and we're continuing to be, even on the new issuance, we're continuing to be slightly under that. And the short-term marketplace continues to be, quite favorable because of the actions that have been taken in the marketplace, particularly by the Feds, to depress short-term rates. So the short-term, in general, is quite favorable. Now we have some stuff that's trading a little bit higher than that, but the price of replacement would be more than what we're paying, and so we're continuing to hold that in the portfolio. But overall, and this will be something that we'll talk about a little bit on Wednesday when we discuss the change in all the forecasts as well as where we think our debt service budget looks. We'll discuss that a little bit then. But fundamentally, we're continuing to be slightly positive to budget.
One other thing. Have we, or I should just maybe put it differently. You mentioned that we're still using the monoline insurers. Has the trade, obviously the trade-off must be positive for us to continue to be using that, but of course their credibility, I believe, has been seriously...
Yeah, let me clarify. Either I misspoke or you may have misheard me. It's not that we're continuing to use them. In other words, the issuances that we've gone out with, where we've gone out with them, have been uninsured. What we have is we continue to keep in place portions of our debt portfolio that have monoline insurers underneath, right, that are wrapped in insurance, where that insurance is either by one of the insurers that remains viable in the marketplace, or where, because of the way the penalties are set, we consider it to be cheaper to maintain it rather than to refund it. We have not gone back in with a new insured product since all this disruption took place in at the beginning of this year.
Two questions. Just first one's a clarification. So the variable rate dedicated tax fund bonds that you issued on the 25th, what was the underpinning credit on those?
You mean who had the LOC?
Correct.
It's FSA insured, and
So we did go out with an
yeah,
insured
on
piece.
that one,
on
sorry.
the variable,
Right.
that's the only one.
You're right.
And I'd like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that because there is so much turmoil in this market, witnessed by the fact that some of our debt sadly was trading at the 10% level, that on a monthly basis, rather than just once in April, we have an overview of how we are doing on our variable rate securities versus benchmarks like short-term MMD rates, so people could see that while we're fine compared to budget, we're not as fine compared to market indices for short-term products, and I think we need to keep an eye on that.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think it's back to the point about what's the total cost of replacing that. There's no question that we have a substantial portion of the portfolio is trading at higher than what short-term rates are that we're getting now when we replace.
Well, at 170 plus getting a letter of credit perhaps for as much as 70 basis points, that still puts us lower than where some of our R's are trading, or actually not trading since some of them are not able to be re-auctioned. So I think just as stewardship, I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had a brief overview of our variable rate product versus some of these benchmarks on a monthly basis rather than once in April.
No, I think that's fine. I mean, we do produce it on a routine basis, so we can share that.
We have been monitoring this very carefully since the crisis started. And Gary has been reporting, plus the bond people. We've had Goldman Sachs down here, who are our advisor, to report on this whole thing. So this committee has spent a tremendous amount of time. And if you would like, if you go back onto the minutes of the meetings that we've had over the last 9 months or whatever since this crisis unfolded, I think you've seen not only we've had our staff, but we've had the external consultants in here. This has been something that we've been monitoring very closely because we were very concerned about it.
Well, what troubled me, Mr. Chairman, was that we issued auction rate securities in November of 2007. There were only two public agencies that I'm aware of that were less fortunate than we were in issuing them later on in that year. The ground was starting to quake under this whole auction product in November, and yet we went ahead and issued those bonds and then had to refund them in February. So I would just suggest that, understood that you're looking at this very carefully, but I think we need to be even more extra careful because it's a very dicey market.
Sure. I mean, obviously, if we had known in November what we knew 6 weeks later, we would not have issued in the mode that we issued in. When that deal was structured, we had not yet seen, the first visible, I think what Commissioner Frasca is referring to as the ground beginning to quake, was that the banks started to receive into inventory substantial amounts of ARS, but we did not see that until well after the moment that we had both developed the product and in fact sold it. It did happen almost, I would say, very quickly thereafter that we began to then watch and then took actions immediately after the first of the year. The timing of the November issuance was, needless to say, not propitious. I mean, although had we taken the action, when we took the action, I don't think there was, at least to issuers, and I know you know that there's discussion going on in the enforcement marketplace about...
Yes, there is. And probably lawsuits to follow, which is, again, why I think we really do need to be very vigilant on a much more regular basis.
In terms of what was visible to issuers from their relationships with banks, I would say that at the time that we issued in November, we did not have a sense of what you're describing as the ground shaking. That became evident to us fairly soon thereafter, but not at that point.
I was referring actually to the fact that some of the monoline insurance companies who provide credit support to a lot of these products were beginning to deteriorate. In, I guess, as far back as July, there were rumors about that, which was why a lot of people were deciding not to issue that type of product. That's what I was referring to.
But the report that Commissioner Frasca mentioned, we do produce, and we can be happy to supply to Finance Committee members.
The next item is the CFO remarks. Gary, you're on again.
Actually, because in July we don't do a budget watch, so therefore we don't update what's happened in the real estate market because of the fact that in 2 days from now we'll be doing the special Finance Committee and board meeting together with the presentation of the July financial plan, which itself then reflects our receipts up to date as well as our projections and changes and forecasts across a broad range of things as we begin to the longer-term process of adoption of the 2009 budget plus the actions that we'll propose for 2008. So therefore, there is no budget watch, and there's nothing really to update on other than to say that what we've watched over the last month is consistent with what it is that you'll see 2 days from now when we issue the new forecasts on the things that we've been watching so carefully.
Action item for the amendment to the 2005 to 2009 capital program. Linda Kleinbaum and Greg Kohlberg are available to go through that.
Good morning. Last month we had presented to Finance a summary of the proposed 0509 capital program amendment. You may remember that this plan has not been amended in some time due to the accelerated capital program, which has, with the failure of congestion pricing, since been vetoed, so that this amendment reflects new priorities and cost changes since the board last did a comprehensive amendment, which was December 06. Given the extensive nature of the changes, the amendment was presented in June as an informational item, giving the board sufficient time to review the amendment and get staff to answer any questions that people might have and to hear about the amendment in committee. Based on these reviews, the plan submitted in June has been modified as described in a staff summary that was sent to you all and I believe is at your places. $28 million of discontinued LaGuardia Airport project funds initially supporting the Tappan Zee Bridge study have been reallocated to the three agencies. $21 million to Transit to add funding to their station critical component replacement program. $4.2 million to add to Long Island Railroad's elevator projects at Flushing Main Street and Queens Village, and $2.8 million to support Metro North's Bronx stations and capacity improvement projects. The Tappan Zee study will be funded within the planning component of the program at a reduced cost of $10 million, reflecting the amount needed to cover costs just in this program period from program income and carryover funds that would have been allocated to the next 5-year program. In all other respects, the proposed amendment is the same as the draft that was submitted to the board in June. We are asking the board to approve this amendment. In summary, it adds $1.13 million to the plan. $1.13 billion to the program, primarily reflecting funds from the full funding grant agreements from the federal government for East Side Access and 2nd Avenue. It allocates the remainder of the discontinued LaGuardia Airport Access Program funds, and it adjusts the program of work to adopt revised budgets and schedules, new investment priorities, and consequent rescheduling and deferrals as identified in the program and summarized at the last meeting. The board's also asked to authorize that the amendment be submitted to the Capital Program Review Board to secure their approval as required by statute. Agencies are here to answer any specific questions you may have, and I think that about summarizes what's before you.
I'd like to open the discussion up to my fellow board members.
Linda,
Yes.
Since the Capital Program Review Board is a political body, and since some of the projects to be deferred are likely in some of their districts, or maybe we studiously try to avoid that particular event, but what is the upshot if they come back and say, you know, we think these should be in and this should not, or, I mean, how much do they micromanage the program, and what's the next step if they say no?
It's a good question. We briefed Capital Program Review Board staff at the same time, right after we brought the amendment here. We had meetings, and we've offered to, and have subsequently provided additional information. The hope was that just like we were providing the board with time to ask questions and get answers, hopefully we did that with CPRB members. So we're hoping that it goes smoothly. In fact, there's a fair amount of work that can't proceed without first this board's approval and then the CPRB board's approval. And we will, let people know that over the course of this year, without getting those approvals, some of the items require board approval only. Some of them require CPRB approval because either they add funds or they take a category within the program over the 10% that we're allowed to do with just board approval and require CPRB approval. So we'll try and let people know the consequences of not approving a program. I can't tell you what they'll do. We may wind up coming back to you all with some changes that they asked for, which would come through you.
Timetable-wise, when would it go to them?
As soon as the board approves it, which means, assuming on the assumption that we got an approval at this board meeting, probably by the end of the week we'd send it up. And we try and indicate in some manner what's at risk here.
One last thing, because I know Jeff wants to speak, but when we had our briefing with President Roberts, I remember Commissioner Page and myself said certain things are not actually deferrals.
Correct.
Because they could not possibly have gone forward anyway. Are they going to be portrayed in that light?
Yes, this issue came up in various discussions, and so what we are trying to do, one of the reasons you don't have a new book here is because we're trying to make all the appropriate adjustments, is to define things that, in fact, as the board points out, are reschedules, such as the Sea Beach stations, where we said some 360-odd easements would be necessary. There's no way they could proceed. Indicate that we're rescheduling those to the next program. Even those that are deferred, however, I would say that the expectation is most of those would be put forth in the proposed 2010 to 14 program, which you'll probably be seeing either the end of this year or early next year.
And will we know where in that proposed program the things that are deferred will appear?
We could make a point of finding a way to highlight those for everybody.
I just want to point out, as Andrew mentioned, the CPRB process for which the mayor does sit on, and there's a wealth of information and more things that we are looking at and will continue with in that process. But I do want to thank staff both at MTA and New York City Transit providing a tremendous amount of information so we can continue to look at that and hopefully in an expeditious way. And I also do want to point out, and the reason why I think we definitely should move this forward to the process is the change over the last month with Tappan Zee funding, which will provide an additional $28 million to projects in the city of New York, I think is tremendous. And for that alone, we should be moving this process along as quickly as we can to get it through CPRB so we can start these capital projects. So thank you for that.
How critical are those items at risk? Excuse me.
I'd say very critical. As you know, we had submitted previously a comprehensive amendment to CPRB for approval, and it hadn't been approved. So this month or soon, the mega projects, Eastside Access, 2nd Avenue, will need to award contracts that rely on federal funds, the extra federal funds, so those need to be included. And then many of the investment opportunities that we spoke to you about happen between now and October. So the fleet need that transit has happens. Just about every agency has projects that happen between now and, let's say, October, November, that would have to be put on hold pending some kind of a program approval. It's significant. it's a significant hold that would have to happen.
I'd like to just, for a second, just speak about generally how I feel about this, and this doesn't imply that I wouldn't vote for this action item, because I will, but I think in here there's very major implications for what's to come in the new capital plan, and what I mean by that is, if you look at it, there's a lot of what we call core maintenance or core upgrading of the system that no matter how you slice it is being deferred. And I think if you go forward into the capital budget, the next 5-year capital plan that was submitted along with congestion pricing, that's now no longer, is basically dead and has been vetoed because of congestion pricing, you'll see that this is an enormously large capital plan, which I think is quite unrealistic considering the financial situation that the state and the city's in, and I think that these mega projects that have been forced on this agency are definitely going to hurt our core capital program, and I think you can see it coming. You can see it in this small, relatively small capital revision in the last year of the old existing plan, and I really think that this board, as fiduciaries, need to immediately take a look at where we stand with these mega projects, where we stand with ongoing work, and I think we need a real thorough review of the whole capital plan, because we are going to be faced with this next year as we present a new capital plan to replace the one that's been vetoed. And I just bring it up, and the chairman is sitting next to me, and I would just like to tell him of my concern and let my fellow board members know of my concern that I think our core system is going to be affected by what we are facing going forward, and I think we need a major review by staff now and not later of the capital plan. Is there any other comments?
Andrew, is the implication of that statement that some of the safety and the health of the system is going to be jeopardized due to the mega projects?
I wasn't particularly referring to safety, and what I was referring to, for example, the station refurbishment program, things like that really affect that our daily, our consumers, our users see every day. Those kind of things, whether it be cars, stations, signals, I mean, the things that we need to keep our system in good repair. That's what I...
Well, signals is obviously a safety, has a safety implication.
I assume that we're taking care of the safety. I've never felt that I was concerned or had any reason to believe that the safety aspects wasn't. What I was referring to more was the core upkeep of the existing system.
By the same token, when we were briefed at Transit, there's quite a bit of personnel reduction in areas of various maintenance procedures. So at some point, you do have to wonder, how many people can you cut and still run a safe operation?
But my concern was not so much the safety, because I do believe this organization has always put safety first, and I still believe that it does that. And I think that is, to me, off the table and should be off the table. What I'm concerned about is that the mega projects eat up the state of good repair expenditures going forward. And I think that the quicker we face up to this, that as a board, the better off we're going to be. And I just wanted the chairman to know about that, how I felt.
I think there's something that somehow you're missing in the way you're viewing this. If you look at the different mega projects, and we had the book in the capital construction program, the vast majority of that money comes from the federal government. And if my understanding is correct, if we don't finish the projects, we've got to give the money back. Just for example, the South Ferry Staffs Ferry project is 81% funded by the federal government. The Fulton Transit Center is 71% funded by the federal government. So most of these projects come not from our monies, but from the federal funds. There's a component in each one, and it varies. So we have to be careful when you talk about it the way you just did, that this is the vast majority is coming from Washington and not from our project, with the exception of the 7th Avenue extension, and that's city-funded money, and that, again, isn't really even our money. The city is putting that up. So you're in danger of mixing apples and oranges here, so I think just go slowly, go carefully.
I'll leave it. I hear your point. I completely agree that we need to make sure that our core program is not in jeopardy. But I wouldn't underestimate the need for us to look forward for expansion projects are just as important as well. But it's why I actually think I agree that it is extremely high. The upcoming capital planners will see it, but it is necessary that we continue to look at this. So in that context, coupled with federal money, I agree with your point. We should make sure that our core plan is not cut at the expense of further expansion projects, but I don't want to underestimate the need for expansion as well.
But you have to be That's just my point. I mean, you have to be realistic. There is going to be X amount of capital available because of the financial situation that the state is in and the area is in. And I think we have to be realistic and take that into account.
I think we all hear your point, and I think we're all as concerned as you are, but we have to be careful about how we handle it. We got to go both ways.
Gary, what do you need, a vote on the action item?
Yes,
the
you
motion?
do need a vote on
Okay.
this.
Okay, a second, please. And a vote, please. Motion carries. Gary, go ahead.
Next, we move to the MTA procurements. There are a total of 8 procurements totaling $10,118,436. One is non-competitive, totaling $176,746, and the remaining 7 are competitive.
Motion, please. Second, please.
Yes, on the McKinsey procurement on page 19, for $3.2 million to develop a new fair technology business case. This struck me as being extremely important, and I wondered whether it was planned by staff to either present the results of this study to the board directly or have McKinsey do it directly. It's the sort of thing that I would very much certainly like to hear and hear it in its sort of virginal state.
We do have staff available, prepared to respond to any questions that you may have on this.
Hi, I'm Larry Fleischer. I'm Chief of Metropolitan Planning for the MTA. I'll be the project director for this study. We will bring to the board the results of the analysis. We expect it to take about a year to get preliminary results, and we'll bring the results to the board as soon as we get them.
I couldn't be more in disagreement with you about this particular contract. I guess my first question is, it says that these systems are going to reach the end of their useful life in the next few years. Specifically, can you tell me what the next few years is?
All of the agencies should be in the proposed next capital program, providing funds to upgrade or replace their systems. Transit's AFC system is just about at the end of its useful life, so it's just more maintenance needs. And the AVMs for the railroads are similarly going to reach the end of their useful lives. So money should be in the next capital program, and this will influence whether it's replaced in kind or replaced with a more current technology, such as things like a smart card.
And we have to pay someone, I guess, $1.5 million to research that aspect of it, and then $1 million to tell us how to implement it with a $500,000 cushion. I realize $3 million is not the biggest contract we're going to be approving, but it seems to me that if this didn't have to proceed today in 2008 and perhaps be put off, or maybe we can research these projects in a less expensive fashion with internal staff, internal systems experts. I mean, there are probably only so many systems out there that could realistically be used by this very complicated system that we run.
Well, I think that's the point. It is a very complicated system. I think that right now New York City Transit is doing some pilots that rely on the banking industry to take the lead in the technology. That may be an approach that works. Whether it works across the family or not, I think we want to be sure that we move carefully and in the most cost-effective way as a family of agencies, and to understand the implications of doing that throughout the family in terms of the amount of time it takes for riders to come into the system, which is a critical issue for us, as well as other elements that this isn't in place system-wide in other transit systems, and we should understand the pros and cons of it from a business case point of view before moving forward, since it is a large investment in the future. So this is, in my view, a small investment in ensuring and giving the board the assurance that when we move forward in the best way possible.
I guess that the subject on the table, I believe, is whether we're seeking to have McKinsey answer questions that we already know the answers to. And it strikes me that on the face of it, we probably do know the answers to many of these subjects. And if you feel that their sort of breadth of expertise in other systems could be useful to you, I guess I would hope that the scope of the work could be defined such that they would actually be answering questions that were open as opposed to questions that were already decided as a practical matter.
As you know, a pilot study is being undertaken right now on the Lexington Avenue line, testing the bank card technology. If that is the approach that we ultimately decide to take as a result of the study, that approach has significant potential for cost savings, but also it is associated with a tremendous amount of risk and a tremendous amount of unknowns, because in effect what we would be doing is changing the way we collect fares, essentially letting the banks do it for us, and that approach is brand new for the transit industry as a whole, especially in the United States, and we need to understand what risks are associated with doing that, and also what the revenue and cost implications are for the MTA. That would be a tremendous change in the way we did business, and this study, among other things, will help us understand those issues.
Yeah, do we know how many systems in the United States or in New York State already have smart card capabilities?
Many transit systems in the country and around the world are migrating to smart card, but there are different ways of doing it. Most systems are doing it in a so-called closed system. In other words, they're replacing their existing fare media with a smart card, with a smart chip in it. This study will be looking at those kinds of systems, but we'll also be looking at so-called open systems, which, like the bank card system, where in effect we could walk away from the business of collecting fares entirely and hand it over to the banking system, and that would be a tremendous change in the way we did business, and that's why the study is needed to help us understand the risks and benefits of that kind of approach, as well as all the other approaches.
So I was in Ithaca, New York, and their bus system had the swipe, but in addition to the swipe, they also had a smart card reader in the bus system in Ithaca, New York. It seemed to be working fine. Is there any comparison done that we could do in-house that would kind of inform the board as to how prevalent these systems are around the area?
Yeah, the study will look at that. But it goes well beyond just replacing the magnetic stripe Metro card with a smart chip. It will look at new practices and policies that go well beyond just their technology.
If I may, if it were just to tell you what exists nationally or even internationally, you're right. We could do a survey of what exists and tell you. What this is designed to do is to give us a business case analysis of the various ways we may go so that we understand, as Larry said, relative to the costs and benefits of each of the different ways to go, whether it's a closed proprietary system, an open system, whether over a transition time what you really want is a combination of those things, given how many people currently have swipe cards, given issues relative to those people who are unbanked. There are just lots of issues that you need to, as you set a course forward, be sure that you fully analyze both from the cost and the policy implication. So this is about those business cases.
I understand that, and I understand that the sheer volume also makes things a lot different. But my point is that before you would bring this decision to the board, it would be instructive if we had some more information about what was available in the area. That's all.
Maybe this has been said, but the premise here is that we're going to get these answers from McKinsey pursuant to this contract, and I don't believe that. I actually believe that we, as an agency, are going to have to answer the questions ourselves, and it's fine to collect information, and maybe this is a vehicle for that. But I think that the idea that they are going to tell us the answer as opposed to us determining the answer is not really where it's at.
Perhaps I misspoke. What I indicated was in each case they would tell us from a business case point of view what the pros and the cons are of various ways of moving forward. It's, of course, always in this board's prerogative to determine which course to take, and it's very possible that policy decisions weigh more than other decisions, but all of that will be presented in a fashion that allows the board to make the most informed and best decision moving forward. That's what I meant.
I guess what I'm saying is that as a board, I think we would be looking to the staff of this agency for the analysis and recommendation, and not looking for an action on the recommendation of McKinsey as a practical matter.
That's fine.
Good.
Yeah. Mark, my point in initially bringing this up was maybe a little at variance with that, but to say that if we were paying for this study for a broad look and to get a, if you will, sort of an independent third party to give us a kind of a global spread on this, that it's something that should come back to the board from McKinsey so that we had the benefit of that broader look and develop the kind of choices and global view that you're talking about.
Oh, so Linda, not to belabor this, but we know that we're most likely going to smart card. It's just which smart card system we're going to migrate to that is at issue here. And you're looking for McKinsey to tell us if we use the bank system versus the manufacturer system as to which is a better fit for the MTA. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair, and whatever else is sort of people are looking at now that would also allow us to incorporate this kind of technology for the commuter railroads, which you hear about the phones and those kinds of things. So what we'd like is something that tells us how to progress across the family of agencies, and also a migration plan, because it may, as I said, it may very well be that you keep swipe for some percentage of your turnstiles and those kinds of questions based on how many people we believe would have the bank cards versus other things. So
well, that's the important thing.
Yes.
Will the study determine whether you go? I mean, obviously the banks are not saying you either have to have a bank card or you can't get in the system.
Right.
That would be foolhardy.
Right.
But But when we choose, if we choose to go with a bank, there will be obviously folks who don't have a bank card and will be issued a generic type of card with a chip in it, I assume.
And that's all part of what would get looked at in this. What
So
exactly
why would we even
those
consider keeping part of the system swiped when those turnstiles are obviously reaching their end of life and have to be cleaned endlessly and are damaging the existing stripes on cards and all of that?
Right, it's just
Plus
that
the dwell time is increased.
Right. But a card with a chip is also more expensive than a card with an electronic. So all of those, from a business case point of view, need to be evaluated to be brought forward, so that we can, in fact, intelligently and in an unbiased way tell you where we think that comes out.
And now that we have handheld readers on Metro North, I assume that this will also study one card for everybody, for all
Correct.
parts of the
Correct.
system?
Those readers, as I understand it, have the capability of reading a chip.
Great.
May we please have a motion? A second, please? And a vote, please? So approved. Gary?
Just for clarity, Mr. Chairman, that was for all 8 procurements, that vote, is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Moving to Metro North, there is one non-competitive procurement for Grand Central Station Public Address System Maintenance, and that's $421,000.
A second, please? Second, please? And a vote, please? So approved.
Long Island Railroad, there is one non-competitive procurement for $18,100,000. And this is on page 33 of your book.
And a second, please?
Mr. Chairman, the question I had on this was whether it was ever contemplated that $12 million was going to do the job, and that, or was it was this contract written with a reopener?
I believe there is a representative from Long Island Railroad.
Good morning. I'm sorry, Mr. Blake. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question is whether this contract, which is described as for a 3-year period in the amount of $12 million, whether it was ever contemplated that we were going to actually get the work done for $12 million, or was it contemplated that there would be a reopener halfway through, and that it could be of this magnitude?
It's our intention to issue the contract, have the work performed during the term of the contract, and at the end of this contract, it's our intention to move forward with a joint procurement with Metro North, with GE for all of our joint requirements.
Is this not an increase in the original contract of $18 million for the same, for the period and for the amount of work that was originally scheduled for 12?
That I'd have to get a clarification on, Mr. Commissioner. I'm not exactly sure. We did have contracts that the contract that was in place is now being superseded by this extension, so that we can be coterminous with Metro North's contract, thereby giving us the ability to do the joint procurement at the end of this contract. So there is some work that was contemplated in the original contract, which will be concluded with the material that we're purchasing under this contract, as well as additional work and additional parts that will be required during the term of the contract.
Okay, I read this a couple of times, and it seemed to me that it was the same contract. It was just that there was an increase in costs, and we were adding this.
Okay, would you do us a favor, please?
Sure.
We're going to vote this. We'll send it to the meeting, but would you please give us a clarification of this prior to the board meeting on Wednesday?
Yes.
Jim, is that satisfactory? Sure. Okay, so may we please have a motion? A second? And a vote, please? Aye. Okay, and that vote is subject to providing us with clarity of the question that the commissioners asked. Okay.
Long Island Bus, there is one competitive procurement for $460,000.
A second, please. And a vote, please. Motion's carried.
And bridges and tunnels, there is one non-competitive procurement for $400,000 on page 37.
A motion, please. And a second, please. And a vote. So moved.
Next, we have New York City Transit, and there are three actions totaling $78,234,135. And there is one competitive, those are the non-competitive, and there is one competitive procurement totaling $6,099,240,003. There is a presentation
That's what I was just
prepared
gonna
for
say.
this.
Right. I asked because of the Siemens, the nature of the Siemens contract. It's something that we've been looking at. I asked President Roberts on Friday, and he said that they would make a presentation. I see Connie and Howard's here, and Stanley, we got the whole crew, so they're going to do that. And also, I know there's a presentation of the paratransit, a brief presentation of it, since it was presented in the Transit Authority Committee. So why don't we move these if it's okay, and then we'll hear the presentations. And a second, please? Okay, so we'll hold the vote until we go. Connie, do you want to take us through, or Howard, on the Siemens? I asked that to please give us a review of the status of the project, the original contract, how much of the extras were, and where we, where we stand before, for me, that we approve another $27 million extra on this project.
Okay, first I want to just brief everybody on what CBTC is and what this contract was. CBTC is Communications-Based Train Control. It is becoming the industry standard for signaling on rail systems. There are over 50 agencies worldwide that have gone to CBTC, and many of those are using it as a retrofit of conventional signaling. And in fact, our counterparts in Paris, London, Hong Kong, among many others, are using CBTC now. It has a number of advantages. It provides the highest level of safety on a railroad. It's a positive control to keep trains apart from each other, a safe distance apart. It maximizes capacity on a railroad because it also allows the trains to get closer together safely so you can get more trains through on a line. It provides operating flexibility because if you do have a delay on the line, the trains can come up close together behind that delay, and when, say, a sick customer is taken off the train, then you can get back on schedule quicker than with a conventional system. There are more suppliers now out there for CBTC than there are for conventional signals. The vendors are recognizing conventional signaling as sort of a dying art. So if you're out buying systems, you have better opportunities to buy CBTC. And our analysis shows that at this point it's cost neutral with a conventional system, although we expect conventional costs will go up eventually over time, and CBTC will be going down. CBTC in New York City Transit is more challenging, as are many systems, and a couple reasons for that. One is the system is so large that we can't just buy one vendor and put it out everywhere. For example, the PATH system right now is updating all their signaling. They're going to one vendor. They're in procurement right now. They can do that. They only have, I think, something like 14, 15 miles of track. We've got 750 miles of track. We're not going to give that all to one vendor. In addition, because our lines on the A division are all interchanged and our lines on the B division are all interchanged, whatever we put in, again, I wouldn't want to give one vendor all the work, but whatever vendor, say, supplies, say on the L line, I need those trains to be able to run on any other B division line. So the systems have to be interoperable. If a train is equipped, for example, with Siemens equipment, that train has got to be able to operate in territory that, Alstom or Bombardier or Thales or some other vendor has put the wayside equipment. So it just makes it more complicated for us. The Canarsie line contract, it is a two-track system, 22 miles, 24 stations, both underground and elevated. We equipped all 212 R143 trains on that line with CBTC equipment. The total project cost $288 million. Siemens has the Siemens Comstock joint venture has $170 million of that. The project began in 1998. We achieved substantial completion in 2006. However, because over the Since 1996, the ridership on that line has almost doubled. We've gone from 56,000 riders on that line to 116,000 riders. So the 212 cars that are equipped with CBTC equipment are not enough. During rush hour, we're also running additional non-equipped cars. I think it's the R160. No, the R62s are also on the. No, the old cars that are out running on the line. But anyway, they're not equipped cars. We have to supplement the CBTC trains with non-equipped trains during rush hour. What we want to do is get 100% CBTC fleet out on that line. The new cars coming in, the R160s, are now going to be equipped. We're going to equip another 8 trains with CBTC equipment to run on that line. Last September, the board approved a long lead item material contract to that end to start buying some of that equipment from vendors. And now we're asking for the balance of that work to do the engineering and install on the R160 trains. There's a bit of engineering involved. The R160 trains are different than the R143s. They have different braking systems and different propulsion systems. So CBTC interface has got to be engineered to fit those particular trains. There's additional scope work. We want to equip 2 geometry cars anytime you do work on a line, and also just periodically you run geometry cars through the line to just check the geometry of the track, to check the geometry of the tunnel, check if there are any intrusions in the tunnel. So we need to equip those as well. And then there are other tools that have been asked for by the Department of Subways, some diagnostic tools that they want to have available with the CBTC system. In addition, because we're now running a mixed fleet out there, we have some conventional signals that we left in place on the line. They have to be removed. That work was part of the original CBTC contract. We're deleting that work from the original CBTC contract. That's $2.1 million, putting that work into this contract because it just makes sense that that work gets done at the end of this installation. The contract also includes $800,000 in indefinite quantity work, which has 2 things. It's whatever task order work that Department of Subway says, gee, if you could tweak this, that would be good. It also allows the Siemens folks to stay around and help train our folks. They will do some of the maintenance operations and shadow our folks to provide that sort of on-site, in-operation lessons learned that our folks need to be fully comfortable with the new system. It's a $27.9 million contract, 3 years, including those task orders that come at the end of the line. We expect to have the new trains all equipped by the end of 2010. And what's next for CBTC? We, with the plan amendment, will be awarding a contract on the Flushing line by the end of this year. And then we've got the Queens Boulevard line scheduled as the next line for CBTC in the next program.
The facts are that we haven't really turned this on full blast yet, have we? Or is this, in other words, we've now spent $280 million on this, Connie, thereabouts. You're now asking for the $27 million to equip the rest of the additional rail cars. When is this Canarsie line going to be up and running on this new system totally?
By the end of 2010, all the new cars will be equipped and running.
But what, if you're going ahead with these other lines now, you're planning on doing this, what assurance does this board have that this thing is really working and going to work before we embark on doing other lines? We don't really have this line up and running yet. Am I right?
Yeah, let me handle that. We don't, but one thing that I did shortly after I got here last year was run a test at the outer one half of the line, basically. And so we closed down normal service on Saturday night, Sunday morning. We had enough CBTC-equipped cars to run on half the line, basically, and we achieved a throughput of 31 trains per hour using the CBTC system. That contrasts to the 23 trains per hour that the fixed signal system gave us. So we are extremely confident that when we have the cars, that we will get the kind of throughput that the system promised. Now there is a limitation on that. We do run into a 2-track terminal at the end of the line, and so that will probably cut the throughput down a little bit from the 31. But this does, after many years of effort, this does work. It's very interesting, the discussion the board had earlier about capacity versus state of good repair. This can be seen as a state of good repair investment that gets you significant additional capacity at no extra cost, because replacing the fixed block system with another fixed block system would cost virtually the same. So we think it's a very good investment. It is one of the few opportunities we have to achieve both our state of good repair and our expansion goals for essentially the same investment.
The cars that you have equipped with the CBTC, are those running now in service every day, or
Yes.
do you have to wait to have all the cars automated in order to cut the thing in?
No, they are.
Yeah. No, actually, the chairman and Commissioner Frasca have visited the control center, and anybody else that would like to do so, we'd be glad to show you. When you look up at the board, you can literally see the CBTC equipped cars running in CBTC mode, and the non-equipped cars running in the old under the old fixed block system.
So what you're saying, Howard, is that in in 3 years you'll eliminate the old manual cars and the whole system will be CBTC. But now, at this point, what percentage of that line is CBTC?
I would say, I would say on a daily basis, probably about from 1/2 to 2/3 of the trains operating in CBTC mode.
And also, the conventional signals that are out there, we hooked them into the CBTC system. So, in fact, CBTC system is running all of the signals. It's just where you have the conventional signals in place, you've got a slower, you're constrained by what the conventional signals can do.
The other contracts that we have with Siemens now, these other major contracts, some of them we've been experiencing a lot of difficulties with. Is that correct, Connie?
That's correct.
And now we're going ahead with this extra with them, awarding them more money, while maybe, and I'm not familiar with these other contracts, but are these other performances, have they been compromised? I mean, what is the status of these other contracts? And in fact, is it right now for this board to grant Siemens another $27 million if their performance on other contracts have not been up to par?
Well, Siemens, like a lot of companies, has a number of large units, and operating units, and the unit that has been managing this contract has performed well. We've, in fact, achieved that substantial completion back in December, and they've been responsive to our needs.
Yeah, I would just add the growth in ridership that has occurred is the entire driving force behind this particular chain. If the L line had continued with the same ridership it had originally, or very modest increases, we would not be here today with this particular action.
Just one question on the linkages between full CBTC operation and on-time performance. Are there any? Because I noticed that some of the IRT lines have the worst on-time performance, yet CBTC.
They're not CBTC.
They're not.
They're
this
ATS.
is our first.
Oh, they're ATS.
Yeah, but not
All right.
CBTC.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
I can't resist adding, though, if we had CBTC on the IRT as we speak, I think my discussions with the committee on on-time performance would be a lot more cordial and a lot happier.
Well, throughput might be better. I don't know about on time.
No, Andrew, it's I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion that, in fact, It is the fact that we are at capacity, have been at capacity for some time, and people continue to come that underlies a lot of our problems.
Okay, Howard, who's going to talk to us about the paratransit now?
Stanley Grill is Mr. Paratransit.
Okay, Mr. Paratransit, go ahead.
I think a small, brief presentation has been handed out to all of you. The goal of the procurement that we're bringing for recommendation today was basically to replace the current 8 primary paratransit contracts, which in a staggered way begin to expire towards the latter part of this year and the early part of next. The other major goal of the procurement was realizing that over the years to come, we had to accommodate the projected growth for paratransit. So the first couple of pages in the presentation give you some idea of that growth. The first one is related to paratransit trips completed, and you can see that we're running about 5 million trips a year right now, and by the time you get into 2012 and 2013, based on current growth and on forecasted projections, we'll have pretty much double that number. If you turn to the next slide, the same is true of the amount of vehicles. We currently have approximately 2,000 paratransit vehicles in service, but by the time you get out to 2012, 2013, we'll be needing nearly double that amount of vehicles and be able to have contracts in place to field that number. The next slide just shows how we're providing paratransit service today. Nearly 70% of the rides are provided by the primary contracts I spoke of, and there are currently 8 providers with about 1,500 vehicles. And we also provide another 25% of the rides through regional contracts that provide primarily intra-borough service on a per-trip basis, and we have 6 contractors there providing between 400 and 500 vehicles, making up the 2,000 vehicle fleet. When we put those regional contracts into place, we did that largely anticipating this procurement coming into play, knowing that we needed to put in place many more contracts than the 8 that we had in order to meet service, and we wanted to have other contractors who had started to get their feet wet providing actual service. And that strategy actually paid off very well for us. The current contracts that we're bringing to you for award this month were to replace the primary paratransit contracts, as I said, and to increase the number of contracts. We wound up recommending at this month 18 contracts for award. There are 2 contracts that require some further look at, and we'll probably be bringing those to September for your approval. What is behind the number that is coming to you for award today is the mathematics of a 10-year contract period with all that anticipated growth. When we actually look at the actual amounts that we're paying these contracts, on average, there's been a very slight increase, and as is indicated in the staff summary that you'll see in the book on the second page, looking at comparative costs between the current contracts and the new contracts on average in a fully loaded vehicle service hour, we've had an overall increase of about 2.5%. The next slide, or page rather, discusses how the contract cost structure works. The primary driver of cost is the variable cost, the vehicle service hour rate. That is a rate that contractors propose for each hour a vehicle is in service, and what is included in that cost is driver salary, benefits, and contractor profit. There are a number of other pass-through costs that we pay for. They submit invoices based on their actual costs, and we pay them for their actual costs. That includes tolls, insurance, and computer replacement that's anticipated over the term of the contract. There are fixed monthly fees that include both non-vehicle costs for maintaining and running their facilities and their scheduling, as well as per vehicle costs. As they roll out vehicles, each one has a fixed cost as they go into service in order to outfit drivers, train drivers, and also to pay vehicle registration fees and the like. There are rates for vehicle maintenance that are in this contract. There are 5 separate schedules depending upon the age of the vehicles. And then there's mobilization fees for startup, which primarily impact the new contractors who we've brought on board through this competitive process, as well as vehicles come on board, there are vehicle startup costs to get them on board. We started doing market outreach long before we started this procurement. When we started the procurement last fall, we had 44 responses from paratransit providers from around the country. We ultimately winnowed that list down to 26 firms who were selected for negotiations, who included a combination of our incumbent primaries, our regional contractors, as well as many new firms who are participating. And we ultimately are recommending 20 firms for award of contracts. 5 firms were eliminated due to them proposing higher prices than the others, and 1 was eliminated due to capacity concerns because the same firm was already getting 2 contracts. 1 is the parent company and 1 is a subsidiary company. And on the last page, one of the questions that has always come up is, over the long term, given this growth, what can we do to try to control costs and also to reduce the dependence upon the outside contractors? And we're in the process of doing an analysis and to support a negotiation with TWU to begin to start a pilot direct operations initiative where we're trying by the end of this year, early next year at the latest, to start in a current facility operating a in-house operation with 50 vehicles.
On paratransit in general, this is growing, as the NYCT committee knows, by 18 to 20% per month. And given that it is a federal mandate, we have no ability whatsoever to cap this service. So we're looking very, very hard at any and all ways we can to reduce costs. And we are working very closely with Jeff Kay and the city on this. Clearly, the more rides we can shift to lower cost alternatives like taxi vouchers and reimbursement, the better off we are. And as Stanley mentioned, we also want to see if we can negotiate a contract with the TWU that it would have a very competitive, fully loaded cost per hour that we could use both to take over more of this work and also use that as a negotiating item with the contractors. The thing that is very good from our point of view about these contracts is that none of the vendors are guaranteed any specific number of vehicles. And as we find ways to go to lower cost schemes, we actually have the complete ability to reduce the number of vehicles that the higher cost carriers are operating. And then we also have a termination for convenience clause, which means that any and all of these contracts can be terminated at our initiative. And so that is where we stand right now on the paratransit situation.
Howard, do you, is there any, since this is a mandated program, do we have a handle on what our operating losses and our subsidies to this program are on an annual basis? I mean, we're going into some tough times, and I know that this is a loss leader for us. And
I think it's actually in the statistics that I handed out this morning. I think our recovery ratio on this is minuscule. We are, as a matter of fact, the increase we're looking at in the per vehicle paratransit insurance, I think, is going to wipe out the whole $2 fare, leaving everything else, as being pure subsidy out of our budget.
Given the presumed improvement, hopefully, I should say, over time in things like automotive technology, and this is a long contract, will we have the ability to influence the choice of vehicles in order to benefit the agency, given that we're paying so much here?
Some time ago, we started buying vehicles for the contractors because we could achieve economies of scale across all the contracts. So we buy the vehicles and turn them over to the contractors. And the plan for these contracts, we're going to be shifting now that vehicles are available to hybrid vehicles.
There also are a number of initiatives. We've started incorporating sedans into the fleet, and we're looking at how high a percentage of sedans, which are obviously much less expensive than the standard paratransit vehicles. There also are a couple of there's a company that's producing or proposing to produce something that called the standard taxi, which will be wheelchair accessible. And its projected cost is going to be apparently a fraction of what we pay for our standard paratransit vehicle at this time. So we do think there's an opportunity for savings on the vehicle side as well.
Will we actually own them after acquisition?
Yes. That also, by the way, I will point out, makes it a lot easier, given that we own the vehicles. I negotiated a paratransit contract with the TW in Philadelphia. Our major problem there was that the carriers owned the vehicles, so that if you wanted to switch from one to the other, you had the problem that you couldn't simply take their vehicles, right?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. May we please have a vote on these procurements? Aye. So moved. Gary, next. MTA Bus.
Next, we have MTA Bus. There is one action item. This is an amendment of their 2000 to 2004 capital program, and it's on page 43 of your book. There is also one non-competitive procurement on page 47 of your book, and this is with Shelter Express Corporation.
May we please have a motion? And a vote, please? So moved.
MTA Capital Construction, there is one non-competitive procurement totaling $304,000.
Motion, please. And a second? And a vote, please?
And there are no items for FIMTAC, and there is an executive session.
Okay. May we please have a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
And a vote, please? Who's going to do the executive